Hemshech Hayim Beis, we're in the middle of chapter 168 about time and space. So he explained so far that the existence and understanding the interface of Adam Kadmon as the all-encompassing energy of existence, called B'chinas Klal Legabe Elemis, Mamutza Da'ak, the interface of Ak, that's a Klal, like the general all-encompassing state of all existence, that everything that exists in the world is governed by time. Because there can't be a world without time and space. And then he explained that there's spiritual space, the Elemis Al Yenim. What is spiritual space? So he explained it first with Likkutei Torah from Seisos, the beer of Seisos, is how different faculties or functions can exist in one area, in one local place, demonstrating that there's something that is beyond space. It's not Tefes Makom, because it doesn't, because spiritual space does not take on, that is not, it's not contained by the physical parameters of space. Additionally, he said that what is the real meaning of space, Mokim, Ikina Mokim Hu B'Maila, is quality, is a state of being. It's the value or quality of something. And explained it with the context of something that's Tefes Mokim or not Tefes Mokim, something that has significance or doesn't have significance, that all that demonstrates on value. If it's in quality, so something that's small, it feels insignificant in the presence of something far larger. Then he said that the truth in Gashmis also, physical also, Mokim, also describes the quality of something, like when we say the category of daimim or tzemeach and so on, the category of mineral or vegetable, it's also quality. However, there, the quality manifests in a physical fashion, physical parameters, some type of measurement. And the spiritual does not. This is called in yesh le'makom. Here we are. Then he continues and says, but you nevertheless have to say that even the spiritual entities in the worlds of Biriyah Tzirasiyah, like the Malachim, the angels and so on, also have some relationship and have physical space has some significance to them. They have to reckon with it in some way. It's Tefes Mokim by them. And he brought several proofs to establish that, because we see when describing the angels and their properties, he brought first of all the number 180,000 camps. Then he brought, and actually that was not a proof. That was just on the contrary. That was proof. So what distinguishes in spiritual worlds? Distinguishes their quality, which means, like the angels, their level of comprehension and their service. Nevertheless, you have to say that too has some type of relationship with Be'erech and Rechev.
Their service means the emotional reaction of these Hafsakot?
The service doesn't say emotional necessarily. The way they serve, this one serves with Chesed, this one serves with Gvura.
No fear.
Doesn't necessarily mean emotional service. Can be different types of service. They do different jobs. They do, so to speak, or different ways they serve.
One goes to destroy.
For example, yeah.
Doesn't mean they feel anything.
He doesn't mention midas. That's all. He says Eifna Sagosim Vavidosim. That's the expression.
It's a good question. If they have feelings,
What do you mean by feelings? Why shouldn't they have feelings? Just like, what do you mean by feelings? Does Atzilus have feelings? Is Chesed a feeling?
No, Atzilus is not a creation. A Malach is a being. It's not a human being, but it's a being.
But Chesed,
The question is, like, could you hurt his feelings? I mean, like, it's like...
Is he vulnerable? That's a different question.
But Imam Malik is brought down that he's like a human being, but he doesn't have the Eish, he doesn't have the Mayim and the Afar, he just has the Eish and the Ruach.
We spoke about that here too.
Yeah. So...
But that's not, he's asking whether the Malachim have feelings. That's not the issue here. We're talking about what distinguishes their levels is their level of comprehension and their service. I can't speculate on that. I mean, do tzaddikim have feelings? They're not petty. You're not going to hurt a tzaddik's feelings with small things. You may hurt his feelings in spiritual things. And Malach would also. If someone goes against God, I'm sure a Malach will be offended. Because they're dedicated to God.
It says that they take the tefillas of the Yisrael and they bring it up l'mayla and Mekafeh.
Right. Yeah.
So they have feelings towards the tefillas.
Okay. Anyway, they have a relationship somewhat with space. And here he brought the proof, first of all, from the Gemara and the Chagiga, the measurements, the Mahalach, the journey of 500 years. The space, the width and space between each heaven, and Raglei Achayis Keneged Kulam, Shukei Achayis. So even though this is Ruchniyus, it's all Ruchniyus, nevertheless, like you showed a Tov Kuf Yud Kei, nevertheless you have to say there's some tfisa, some type of relationship with Geshem, because we keep seeing relationships, you keep seeing the identification with measurements. Malach Shlish Ba'elam, whether it's a third of the world, or the world is a third of the angel. And then finally in Brachas, Mechol Ba'achas, Gavriel B'shtayim, and Elio B'arba. Tisa, that takes 4 jumps. Because he was once a body, and then he went up and became a spiritual entity. So he needs to have 4 jumps. 4 movements. Then he established as Chol Siyam Makim B'chinas Malchus. It all begins in Malchus. Higher than Malchus, there's no Makim. And nevertheless, what we find Makim in Atzilus, he said that's completely quality. There's no relationship. No, in Atzilus, you're not going to say Chesed Atzilus. There's 4 jumps, or 1 jump, or 3 jumps, or 500 years, or any type of such relationships. There, it's purely quality. Chachma Bina. When something is higher than another, there it means quality. It's higher. As he says, that's the kelim of Eshes Firis, and so on.
When we took jumps before, that we meant that's something to do with time and space. It's not necessarily. It's not only quality you're talking about. When a malach is that one of the proofs that they have something to do with?
Yeah.
There's no Erech and Rechav in it. That seems to be the term he uses.
No, Erech and Rechav could be completely spiritual. Erech and Rechav, for example, Chachma and Bina is the point, and then there's Bina is Erech and Rechav, Chebes Hanar. Has nothing to do with it could be spiritual width and length, and there's also a physical spiritual width and length. Here we're talking about a connection to something that's tangible, intangible physical space.
That's also spiritual.
Yeah. That's Eirich doesn't mean necessarily physical, spiritual. That can be either way.
It's another ayah.
Anyway, the bottom line is that it doesn't just jump from pure spirit and quality to what we call quantity and measurements in physical. Some way there's a relationship on certain levels of Biyah, B'riyat with the beginnings of physical time and space. It doesn't say they're bound by physical time and space. It says that's Tefis Mokim by them. She'elim Tefis Eza Mokim L'gab Melech. Eza Mokim. So in other words, there's some reckoning. Like I mentioned, the angels dressed up in garments to look to Avram Avinu. So you see that there is a manifestation in the physical. Eliyahu Novi is a good example. It's an excellent example because Eliyahu Novi definitely started out in the physical plane. So as I say, it doesn't explain it. We will get to that. If we need to explain it, we'll explain it later. If he doesn't explain it sufficiently, that's what we learned till now. So really, we have like 3 levels. You can say you have physical time and space as we know it. You have total spiritual time and space, or space. We're talking spiritual space and physical space, as we know it, measured by real identification. There, two quality defines. The space also means quality, but it also takes on a type of physical parameters and finite structure, so to speak, or physical finite structure. And then you have spiritual, like an Atzilus, and then you have Biyah, seems like an in-between place, where you have, it's not physical, but it has a relationship, it reckons with it. In some way has significance, physical space and time, physical space, actually. So there's like three levels here.
Malchus, you're saying Biyah. Biyah is also a Siyas, of course it's like this Malchus of Biyah we're talking about, which is like half and half.
No, the angels are like half and half. Malchus is what creates it, begins from Malchus. Malchus is what shapes it. Malchus Vatsilis is where Mokum begins, this type of Mokum. Malchus, that which creates Mokum of Biyah. That's what he says. Malchus the Sab, Mokum the Biyah. So it's like three levels, you can say. So in other words, a concept of finite structure does not necessarily necessitate that it's physical. You can have an Atzilus finite structure, Chochmah, Chabina, so on, Chesed, Gvura. That doesn't mean it's physical. It just means its qualities. Chochmah is different than Bina, and that's that. That's what makes it higher than Bina. Or you could have the quality plus a physical element to it. Or you could have something that's something in between. That's clearly the way he's explaining it so far.
You're putting it in three different categories. I thought shouldn't it be in two categories? One is Atzilus and one is Biyah, including the Malachim.
And then there's Gashmis, Elam Haza. I'm just giving an example because Gashmis is ultimately. Yeah, that's it.
I thought you were separating them, Biyah and Malachim.
No. I was talking about Gashmis, Gashmis, Mamish. Atzilus, he says, Chaz b'Shalom, Tfiz Mokum Chumri Chaz b'Shalom.
What's Chomer here?
Okay.
Chomer Rishon?
Matter.
Chomer Rishon, or
No.
no? Then why would we even consider that?
Mokum Chumri is trying to establish that it has no Chaz b'Shalom. It has no connection to anything that is crass space, tangible space.
As opposed to Biyah. Like a Mon. This could be like the Mon. The Mon is like.
Yeah, Ruchnis, yes, does have. That's what he's saying. Does have.
It's a Geshem, not the Chomer. It's crass.
It's not distinguishing between the two here. The angels do have. They have to reckon with it in some way. They have to reckon with this world's crass measurements. I emphasized it yesterday. I said that he adds here Chumri before he said Gashmi. But clearly he means both. Because how else are you going to explain it? He's emphasizing it's two elements. You could say Gashmi, Chumri. That means not distinguishing between the two. But it's clearly that we're talking about the intangible. You could focus on the tangible as just being tangible. You could focus on that. It's very crass and very... That and emphasizes how much Atzilus is negated from it. He's not saying Atzilus is not negated from Gashmis and only from Chumris. That's for sure not what he's saying. Okay. Basically, Atzilus, remember we learned the Zelakus. The 10 spheres there are completely united with godliness, with the divine. And the divine, you God forbid to say, that has any close relationship with physicality in any form or fashion. Basically what he's saying. So now we continue on. If anyone has questions, feel free. And now the way they are in the state of in space, in the level of space, same thing. They're in the level of time. Remember, he began with time. If you recall, in the beginning of the chapter, he only mentioned time. Then he said, Eilam is a tachas azman. Then he said, the Eilam cannot be without time and space. And then went a long discussion on space. Now he's going back to time. The kol shmash nesava had zman. That everything that was created is under the governance, is under time. As a zman is in a state of some type of period of time. is in a state of time. In other words, what does that mean? The levad zeishn is havim min aheder lahaviyah. Besides the fact that it was created and came into being from nothingness, from nil to something, Haviyah means here, not Havaya, Haviyah means being, Haviyas, being. So there's right there, that means there was a time that it didn't exist, and they came into being and were innovated, created.
There was a time that time didn't exist.
What he means here is not that there was a time there was no time. He means to say that this is under the structure of time. It's defined by time because it does not. It's not endless. That's really what he means. So, in other words, from its inception, it was right away within the existence connected to time. That's what Pashas what he means. So, if that's the case, it's Tachas Hazman. It's under the rules of time. So we say what was before, we say there was no before. That's exactly the point. That before is not under time, and this is under time.
That's really no.
So that's Levadzes. It's still middle of Levadzes. Now that's in general time. Mashiyesh la'ilim zman. That Elam, the world, existence, has a time. That's how he explains it. Where's the additional after Levadzes? How far does it go? Or is it already here? Did anyone go? I'm looking where the second half of the Levadzes is.
Down here.
Which line?
Third from the bottom. Last, fourth, fifth group. Indian and Salkus is one.
That's in parentheses.
One drop after. Starts talking about.
Okay, let's read on. It seems that there's still it's still in the middle of a Levadzes, or maybe it already went to the second half. Let me see this again. The Levadzes.
It's right here by Harei.
Maybe that's the Harei.
Yeah,
but that's the Harei sounds like a conclusion of. Yeah, what's the two things?
Came from Nil into
Yeah, so tell me, and the Harei is an additional thing?
Yeah.
I don't think so. It doesn't make sense because the Harei sounds like it's translating that.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's Mina had the Elavia.
Hine, I think the Hine. Yeah. The Hine is not an explanation of that. Okay, so the first thing is
that it came from had the Avia. And then also it's from Mahavim himself.
Yeah, exactly. So the Hine is not an explanation of that first step.
Right.
So that first step you have to say, even though it sounds like he's saying that there was a time it didn't exist.
But there's also a time that they're not going to exist. That it's not going to exist. That's what
I think, you know what, let's go pashtus. We're being too smart here. There's nothing wrong with saying this, that everything in the existence was a time it didn't exist. Forget about what existed in that time. You and I, there was a time we didn't exist. I'm not talking now the first second of Bereshis Bara Elokim. Let's not talk about that. Everything exists. There was a time it didn't exist. So right away, that means that right away tells you you're under time.
That's one thing. This is the Levadzes, and then this.
Correct. That's one thing.
We're not going to exist.
The question of the first second. So there you have to say the first second was created, time was created, but basically existence is under control of time because everything once wasn't, now then it became. There's a time that wasn't there. So
the second half of it is that.
Yeah. Now, one second. Let's just finish the first. Yeah. So if that's the case, we're under control of time. Or else, if you were not under the time, then you should have been here all the time. The fact that we were once not here means that we are defined by time. This has nothing to do with space. This is time. In addition to that, It's time in general. Not just that there was a time we weren't here, which shows that we're under the control of time. Time in general. Mashiyesh le'elam zman. Sorry, I read the tone a little different, this song. That time itself. Mashiyesh le'elam zman. That the world is defined by time. Hainu, what does that mean? Masha'elam v'chol mashanishavim ba'elam. The world and everything that's created in the world, hariyavayim v'nifsadim. Not that there was a time they didn't exist. He's talking now in the future. That they are havayim v'nifsadim, they come into being and they v'sadim, they erode. What's the word nifsadim? They erode, they deteriorate.
Disintegrate.
It's not the right word here, not disintegrate. It means they age. It means v'sadim, they decompose. No, Sada means that they are temporary. They're basically temporary. That's the word. They're temporary.
Disappear.
I mean, technically, in the Sada means they will die. That they are not nitzchim.
They're lost.
But they mean, but it really means that they're temporary. They're not permanent.
They're there, they're not there. That's it.
Right. But the interesting thing, he's distinguishing with the first one. The Levad Zayis seems to be like it's not. You think the Levad Zaman B'chlal. Havayim v'nifsadim means that they came into being and they will end. In other words, they begin and end somewhere. They have tchila and they have a sof in time. But the first thing seems to say that there's. I
think havim means present. Kol mashanishavim, whatever was created by them, havim they are present. V'nifsadim, and they will erode. That's future. So
but Havayim means that they come into being. That's what Havayim means. That they're present. Okay. Why would he mention that they're present? Who cares?
Because these Hava, they were created and they're present and they will erode.
Sounds like the Havaya that he mentioned before, the Haviyah, the being. Okay, clearly there's two things. V'zeuin azman, mashniskachu.
I think it's all the same thing. After the parentheses, he says,
I think so too. This sounds the hine.
Because Vahainu makes it sound like it's explaining.
No. It sounds like the hine is the second, but now it sounds like it's going back to the first. Because look at the next line.
Because it's all.
It was simpler that way, but
look right after the.
No, it's too close. I'm telling you, it's too close because he's basically saying. Because he's saying, let's continue. Excuse me. That's what time is. That they're innovated. They're renewed. They're new. They were created from anew. That means they didn't exist before. That was the first.
And then
and also what they will at the end, they will ultimately be bottled. I don't know if that's the Levadzes. I'm not sure. You know what? Let's not guess. Let's continue reading. If we find another element, then maybe this is all one. Fine. With bottom line, the question is where the Levadzes ends. Right now, I don't mind saying that it ends there, and it's like breaking into two. It doesn't sound so much in Havana. It doesn't make so much sense because Levadzes makes it sound. It says man b'chlal. Levadzes makes it sound that there's an additional element, a side element, and then Zman Bechlal. But Zman Bechlal sounds like the beginning and end. Sounds like both parts. That's why. But let's continue. Let's see. So yeah, and he said,
evaporate.
Right. That the heavens and the existence will ultimately will
evaporate like smoke.
Right. Will evaporate like smoke. Will go up in smoke. Yeah. Dissipate. That's good. Yeah, dissipate is a good word for nifsadim. And that is general concept of time, which means beginning and end, essentially. Av mishum ze'ein leim zman prati k'mo shit al fishnin.
He's breaking down even more.
This may be the Levadzes. Now he's going to zman prati.
Yeah. Look right after the parentheses. He says, "Rak."
Okay, let's see here. Now let's continue. Aval b'shum zeh ein leim zman prati k'mo shit al fishnin. What does that mean?
You don't say it's a certain amount of time.
He's explaining himself. It's
There's no.
He's saying.
Read the translate. Aval b'shum zeh. Because of this, you don't say
that there's a certain amount of time.
Right. There's individual instances. So we have.
B'shum zeh ein leim zman prati k'mo shit al.
You say there's a before and a after or whatever.
In other words, you're just saying in general that's time.
That's time. You live it.
But you don't say because of this designate 6,000. You just say in general time has these parameters. The zman hakloli hu she'elam is saying zmanim v'lei nitzchi. general time is that existence, the worlds, are zmanim. They are defined by time. In other words, there's a beginning and end, and they're not eternal. They're temporary. But zmanim means temporary and also beginning and end. Because it could have been 1,000,000. It could be 100,000,000. What Zman tells us is that there's a parameter of beginning and end, that there's temporariness. But that doesn't compel us. That doesn't compel us to say that there's a specific limit called 6,000 years.
That must be the other thing of Zman.
That's the additional Levad Zeis, you mean to say?
Levad Zeis, that it's klali, which is everything has its...
I agree. Because all this is in the category of beginning and end. So I agree. I would not say the Hine is the second half of Levad Zeis. Levad Zeis is besides that Zman B'chlal is parameters, there's another additional time parameter of 6,000. That's what sounds like he's saying. It's fine. It's not the first time.
Okay.
Because he's definitely now adding this whole thing with the Zman Prati. So that general concept, so general time has limit, but then there's an additional limit of the detail. Okay, let's see what he says in the parentheses. Let's finish the Inyan and then we'll go back.
Parentheses.
Okay, Inyan ha'ed, he says in parentheses, Kovid lemer Inyan hazman. How does this fly in here? Wow. Okay, but Inyan ha'ed, not sure which Eid he's talking about, the Eid of Etzilus. Okay, let's read it, let's see. I think in general he means an Eid Ein Sof. Or Eid. No, it doesn't mean sunlight. He means Elikus. I don't know, I'm not sure. But let's see. It's hard to say, difficult to say, Inyan Hazman, Be'efin Kazeh. It's difficult to say the idea of time in this form. Does he mean the form of 6,000, or does he mean the form of the general structure? Let's see. De'ime Yeshe'er Gamkin Kodmei Heder. Kodmei Heder, fine. That's a new sugya, I gotta explain that. He didn't ever mention it before. Because even though Eir is also Kodmei Heder, let me explain what Kodmei Heder is. It's a concept of Chassidus. I mean, technically it means that it's not, it has a beginning. Kodmei Heder means something that there's nothing that, there was a state of not, that didn't exist preceding it. So Kodmei Heder, that before there was Heder. So this is used in Chassidus to explain, for example, Eir Ein Sof. You can't say Eir Ein Sof, you say Ein Sof. Remember we said it's not Eir Shel Ein Sof we learned. It's not the Eir is of Ein Sof, the Eir is Ein Sof. So it goes endlessly. But you don't call it Ein Tchila. It has no beginning. Not because there's no beginning in time. There is no time there. But in concept, because it's not its own source. It has a source called Atzmos. So you call it, there's two levels, you call it Kodmei Heder. Meaning to say, not that technically there was a time it didn't exist, but in concept, it's not something that is as Kadmon as the beginning itself. An example given for it, for example, let's say you have a pole that's infinitely high, and it casts an infinite shadow. So the shadow you'll call is infinite, but you're not going to say that the shadow has no beginning. It has a beginning. It's the pole. So that's what you would call Kodmei Heder. That there's a state that is not the shadow, and that's the pole. So technically, it's there as long as there's a pole. There's also that shadow. Now there's no long there, since the time hasn't been created yet. You only call it Kodmei Heder. Then there's a level actually in Chassidus that says Ke'ein Kodmei Heder, which means it's not even Kodmei Heder. It exists. As long as Elikus exists, it exists. However, you still cannot say that it is Atzmos. No. Because Atzmos is Atzmos. There's only one Atzmos. It's Eir of Atzmos. Ke'ein Kodmei Heder means It's as no, because Atzmus is not even Kain Kadma Heder. Atzmus has no Kadma Heder altogether. It's the source of the source. So it's a little hard to visualize because you see there's no time there. But yet, nevertheless, you could understand, even though there's no time, you can understand that it's not the source. It's desired by the source. So for us, the hard thing is to understand is 1 second. So when did he desire it? Like what do you mean? It arose in his will to have but there's no time. So the whole thing has to be understood purely in concept. This is why it gets so difficult. Remember, he's discussing here time, from physical time to semi-physical time to spiritual time. Now we're talking about something that's purely conceptual.
So it's connected.
That's what this parentheses. That's why this parentheses is complicated parentheses. But I didn't think the Rebbe Rashab is going to leave us over the hook here so quickly. Let me finish reading it. Let me just see what he's going with this. Let's see.
You just made it sound like Kadmei Heder. He just said a few lines earlier. She was having him in Heder.
So now he's saying, Inyan Eid, it's hard to say this, because even though Eid is Kadmei Heder, but he's going to now distinguish that it's not like Metzias Elam.
Yeah, but every Metzias is Kadmei, is having in Heder.
No. That's the whole point. That's why I just elaborated that Eid is not like that. Eid is always there, but it's Kadmei Heder, meaning because there is a source. 1 second, let me finish. So even though Eid, you can't call Eid Atzmus, it's Kadmei Heder. A state precedes it, basically. A state that it didn't exist precedes it, not in time but in concept. And it's not Gileah Helam. Eir is not Gileah Helam. It's not just the core, the etzem, the core revealing itself. It's another dimension. Like it says also. However, once the Eir has emerged, it's not like existence. Existence always knows that it has a beginning and a parameter that at times didn't exist. And its sustenance, its permanence its existence is a permanent one. You don't call air temporary type of existence. You don't say that.
You do say it. In Indian it could be, but we call it kiyumei because kiyum atzmi.
So why does
because the Eibishter wanted for this.
Why does it say Chaz v'Shalom? Why does it say Chaz v'Shalom?
I don't know.
If the end is true, that's why it says Chaz v'Shalom.
No.
I'm reading it very straightforward.
Yeah, but next word.
It has to be Havon. I told you many times. You read lines, you have to have context.
The context is right here. I'm not going to He's saying that the world.
I would almost Lula Mustapina say it's supposed to say any Yochalius. She's Batla Chaz v'Shalom. It doesn't stem with what he just said is Kiyum Atzmi.
Yeah.
So why would he suddenly say V'Yochalius she's Batla Chaz?
The line further. The while is there to Kiyum Atzmi.
No, something is missing here.
Yeah, the Kol Makim is Masber.
The Rebbe created the world, the Lahir Seilemas, the whole Eir is Lahir Seilemas. The world is only going to be Shich Alfi Shnin. After that, it's not going to be Lahir. The Eir is not going to merge anymore. It doesn't need the Eir. But while it's
I would say that he wants to point out, let's talk about the Havana of the thing and then we'll go back to the words. The context, the understanding of it is, he wants to distinguish Eir from the rest of existence, which is the point of Kadmei Heder. Existence, by definition, is in the world of time. It is, first of all, it has a beginning and has an end. Its personality is constantly under the effect of time. It's always
and dissipating.
And therefore it is temporary. Right, it's not Kiyum Atzmi. An Eir is Kiyum Atzmi. So even though Eir also has a source,
and that's why it can be Mizbachel.
Maybe that's what he means. I'm not sure. I don't know about the Yocheliyas, to be honest. To me, it's a little out of place, but I'm not sure. I would say that there's some words missing here, probably. Because once he said, he says, so there he should have said, anyway, fine. Nevertheless, once it exists, it's a vekus mekeder v'kiyum b'chinas kiyum atzmi. So here's the question: is what does that mean? If Eir compared to Atzmus is equal to Yesh, so why is Eir different than existence? So the answer is because it's vekus b'mekeder. Really, it means it's bittul. It's mitzias is bittul. So there's a Maimer Tafresh Sadi Dalad.
What is the gather of Kiyum Atzmi?
I'm going to explain it now. I'm in the middle of explaining it. There's a Maimer in Tafresh Sadi Dalad from the Rebbe Frierdiker Rebbe, the deepest hemshach of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that he actually stopped saying in the middle because some chassid came to him and told him it's too complicated. Tafresh Sadi Dalad.
Stop saying it for what?
Because someone came and said that it was too complicated for the crowd. And the Rebbe then gave it to the guy over his head. He said, too complicated, so don't come. What do you mean? Why are you telling the Rebbe that?
Unbelievable.
And Frierdiker Rebbe then said that we want to give the Elam, I think he said pearls, and they want to have toys.
Pearls in soup.
They want to have pearls, they want to give them gems, and they want to have tzadkas.
Yeah.
Not the Hemshech. He said 7 memorim. I wrote up a whole thing about it. I taught it as well. I wrote up a whole thing on this Tzadik Dalet. Tzadik Dalet is very, very deep stuff about this idea of the difference in bittul, of the ilmus, and the world, and so on. So he says there an expression which literally helps explain this here. He says the physical world is mitziyusei, is not mitzaratzme, and kiyume is not mitzaratzme. Meaning its existence is not on its own; it comes from something. And its kiyum, its personality, in other words, its sustenance is also not on its own. It needs to be sustained. So think of throwing a rock. Throwing a rock, the rock doesn't become a flying rock. The rock will stop flying at some point after the energy that you invested in it dissipates. Ruchnis, he says, is mitzayuse is nish mitzadatzme. But kiyum is mitzadatzme. And he says the same word because it's dveikus b'mkedei. So its existence is not on its own, like he says here, kodma heder. Because you can't say Ruchni is self-made, God forbid. It's obviously not self-made. But kiyume, he says, it's sustenance, so-called. Something about it has a kiyum atzmi. When it exists in a permanent fashion, which seems to be a problem. What does it mean? So the Rebbe has a order there. He says to try to explain it a little, al pinigla, and the order itself is complicated. The Rebbe writes like this. He uses an example of machzis hashekel. So machzis hashekel, on one hand, you're supposed to give a masre yofa. Once you give your half of shekel, your half a coin, to the hegdish, it's yofa. You have to give it away completely. You can't say, I'm giving it on condition that I can get it back. It's no longer yours. It became now a mom and sibur. And once it's mixed with everybody's, they bought the carbon tamidim, the carbon sibur, the carbon that was brought every day for the whole Klal Yisrael. So it's not like you have a share in it.
Not a shudder.
Right? It's now become part of that. But when Moshe is mispal about Kairach, this week's parsha, what did he say? Al tifen el minchasam. Don't turn to their mincha. But the carbon mincha is a mincha for everybody.
It's not theirs.
It's a tzibur. Right. So how does it mean that don't turn to theirs? In other words, to their partner. But we just said there is no partner. So you see that the kiyum is still there. The mitzias of your coin is no longer your mitzias is not there, but the kiyum in some way. That's the Rebbe's example. And then he writes, I think Adayin Tzarachian and Kamekem or something like that. The Tzarachian and Kamekem. So Noska Gerari Alav Shalom from Montreal went into the Rebbe and asked him Rebbe Pshat. And the expression that I heard, and I have to research it more, was that one of the things the Rebbe said was, "Was means the bittel can bottle werden." bittul can't become bottle. So it's something that's a mitzias of a yesh. It's screaming and yelling, I exist. Oh, you exist? Yeah. You got a beginning, you have an end. Oh, it doesn't claim that it exists. It claims I'm completely nothing. I completely bottled tel the course. So obviously it didn't create itself. First of all, it doesn't say it did. Number two, it actually didn't. It is a reflection of Elikus. But by its personality, which is really no personality, its non-personality, the more you mavatl it, the more permanent it becomes. So you see, existence, material existence, is defined by parameters, by time, and therefore it doesn't have permanence. You can't call something that's material permanent. By nature, everything in this existence is temporary. You can call permanent kiyum atzmi, because its nature, or so-called quote-unquote nature, is bittul. And bittul is by nature, by definition, permanent.
So bittul is not heder. That's what you're saying.
Bittul is heder. No. But kodma heder, no, the reason you say kodma heder, because technically, it's not the mokir. But remember, there was no time yet. He's basically, let's remember again, he's saying it's difficult to say time as we're discussing it. All these elements of time. I guess he means both the general time, that time has beginning and end, and also the specific. Specific for sure. But even the general is difficult to say. Why is it difficult to say? Because even though Kodma Heder, meaning, as I just said, Mitzvusei is the Mokir is its source. So that means Kodma Heder. But in its being, its personality is a permanent one. So that's why he doesn't want to apply the word time on it. That's what basically he's saying. The word time on Eir is difficult to apply. That's essentially what he's saying. Now, the exact language of Yochel Yizbat L'Chaz V'Shalom, I have a problem with that because I think in places it says, you're busy proving your line. I'm trying to understand the Havana. You're busy with the line. The line is not.
It's not the line. The Havana is right.
The Havana I just explained. The Havana is not there. He didn't discuss this before. Kodma Heder wasn't mentioned.
No.
I'm talking about Kodma Heder. You're talking about something. I know what you're talking about. You talked about the Eir. There's a whole memorim about Eir. Why it's called Eir Ein Sof and Eir, not Eir Ein Tchila. Is that what you're looking up?
No, I found it right here. Der kam dem Ziuse hu min Moir, und wie zeh kiyumay, shay ay hu agile rit sayni mit say yizbarach meir, mit say khulu. In other words, you could stop it.
Yeah, that's partial, no?
Yeah, man can call that cuz man shay nimmt so beginnes kiyum atzmi, the lieshay davik betzem I mean.
That's exactly what it says here. Yeah.
Find it right here.
So what are you proving with this?
Explains, maybe you can use so you can say v'yochel yizbat.
Because it says mit say yizbarach meir, mit say khulu.
No, there's no question that Eir, see, when he speaks about, for example, Chassidus speaks about the example of Eir, that it doesn't affect the source. So this is an example of the sunlight. This is the distinction between sunlight and Eir, right? That's what you're talking. I'm talking about the Maimarim about Eir. So he qualifies that, say, even though Eir is like sunlight, but the difference is the sun cannot choose to stop shining. Because the sun is a moed. And Elikus, it could choose to stop. Even though it doesn't choose. Because the fact of the matter is, Eir does not have to exist, but it does exist. Yeah. That's fine.
When it exists.
That's the key here. That's the key difference. But the Havana is not what you says. The key that he wants to say here is that you can't apply time to Eir, basically, even though Eir is in existence.
Even though.
But it's a major point here because he wants to point out that, remember we're speaking about levels in time. We have Atzilus. On Atzilus you could say time and space, but Ruchni is the time and space. In Biyah you could say time and space, but it's closer to Gashmis. In Elam Hazi you say Gashmis. In Eir you can't say time. That's the key thing he wants to establish here.
The Eir of Atzilus.
No, this is no Eir of Atzilus. Well, without the Kalim maybe, but Eir in general, because it's Kiyamatzni, you can't apply the concept of time in it. That's the bottom line that he wants to say. Even though Eir itself is Kodma Heder, the word he uses here, which is similar to Metzias, is also Kodma Heder. But there it's actual Kodma Heder, and here it's not actual. No one's disagreeing that Eir could be in his battle. We're talking about just how the lines were read. and also the Chaz v'Shalom. You're saying Chaz v'Shalom means that God forbid, if it was Nizbatel, all of existence would be Nizbatel. That's the Chaz v'Shalom. So Chalish is battle Chaz v'Shalom. Begins Kiyam Atzmi v'Yochel. The Kiyam begins Kiyam Atzmi. Nevertheless, Mekal Mokim who begins Kiyam Be'ez Kiyum begins Kiyam Atzmi.
Okay, does it not community vision?
Even over there, you didn't want to say it. He just says,
What chapter is that?
Perchas 88.
Yeah. It talks about Shemesh before that. Is that correct? Well, definitely by the Shemesh he said it also.
It's talking about Tzva Maila.
Oh, that piece. Yeah. There's another place. Okay, look also. I'll show you another place where he talks about it.
Where are you there?
88.
Page 88.
What page?
Kuf Ayin.
Kuf Ayin?
No, because he's talking about Misper Chshivus. There's also talking about quantity and quality. Yeah. Remember, there are also Malchus. It's a whole piece there. It's also very relevant. Quantity and quality.
The whole thing is, even though like the same Maila is Chazakim came bottom, so it's not Nifsin, but it calls them out. It's not a Kiyam Atzmi. Eleven lines from the top.
So or it'll be Kiyam Atzmi.
There he's distinguishing even between Tzva L'Maila. Even Tzva Maila that God wants to be permanent, let's say the sun, the moon, the celestial bodies, it's still not like Eir. Because there God implants in them something opposite of their nature. That even though physicality should erode and dissipate, they still Chazon Kiyum Burm. But the Kiyum, yeah.
Even though the Tachas is Zman, right?
Yeah.
There should be Na'ayim Nifsin.
Okay, yeah.
Also, is a Kalim Kiyam Atzmi. Also, the Shamas and Kiyam Atzmi. It's all different kind of idea there, right?
Yeah, there was the Vegas Niketas. There's also another place. I spoke earlier about Eir, about the sun. Where is that? Let me show you. Also brings it there. You know what? Actually, what did we say? Kufayin you just said. I usually say. So there's where's that? Here we go. It's a whole piece with chapter to 55, 56. Okay, just pointing it out. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to where we are here. So this parentheses qualifies that what we're talking about, the time he's talking of here, he starts speaking about Zman B'chlal, and Zman in general has beginning and end. Something was, and then it became. So even though Eir has one similarity, so to speak, Kod Meheder, but you can't compare it at all to existence that's under the governance of time. That's what he's saying. Like Inyan is Chalkos Azman. Now he goes on after the parentheses and says, so it's going back to the point before the parentheses. What's the point? That the fact that time itself has parameters and before it existed, and then it didn't exist, and it's temporary, does not compel us to say 6,000 years or any type of specific limit. It just says in general it's limited. You can't even say that. Then he goes on. However, the primary distinction of time, the distinction of time, the primary element of that is an Eir Chayesh B'Nevroim. It's in the energy and the life force within creation. This seems to follow the parentheses. In other words, at an Eir, lower levels of Eir, that's where time begins to. Okay, let's read on, and then I'll explain what let's read on. Like it's known, it's known in the topic of the Chayes V'Shuv, so the pasuk in Yecheskel. See, the Chayes, the vision he had that it was running to and fro, but really Rotzev V'Shuv is a type of a double movement, so to speak. The Koyal Ha'Eir V'Achayes Alakisha B'Nevroim, that's why it's called Achayes Rotzev V'Shuv, because energy, it refers to the energy and the life force, the divine life force inside creation. It's in a state of Rotze and Shuv, meaning it flows. It's like a pump. Think of it like a pump. This is going to be the definition of time, the source of time. What's the pump? The pump goes. There's a compression, and there's a contraction, and there's a expansion, like a heart.
Breathing, everything.
Yeah, so breathing, exhale, inhale. Vatamhu. The problem I'm having is exactly what is he saying now. He just said the detailed distinction of the 6,000 years is an Eir V'Chayesh B'Nevroim.
It's like it's there and it's not there. It's there, it's not there.
No. But is this going back to Zman Kloli? Let's read and then we'll go back. Okay. It's hard to say without. So he says now.
He fears very soon.
Okay, good. Vatamhu Aleph. The reason for this is, why does the energy have to be in such a form of so-called expansion, contraction? This type of tool. Think of it like a lightning bolt. You always see positive and negative. Why does it have to be? So there's two reasons he's going to give. Echad mipnei sho'ar levad. Being that Eir is only a reflection, he wants to
connect back.
Right. Therefore, it's always in a state of going back to its source to regain energy. It has to go. It's like electricity. It must be connected to its source. So if take cut off the source, electricity doesn't run one way; it has to run both ways. It's not like electricity is running into our light bulbs. I'm just giving you an example. It has to be connected to the source all the time. So in a sense, when you say what do they call it? A live wire. The juice is running. You actually say running juice. What is that? Because the juice is running from the source all the time to the object. So even though you don't see it running back and forth technically, but it is. It's constantly. It's not like.
Isn't that AC? That's what.
No, one second. No? 1 second. It's not like you pour somebody water. I pour you water. That's it. The water is only shuv. There's no rotze. The water doesn't go back to its source. Now you have your cup. I gave it to you. It's shefa. Eir is only a reflection. Being it's only a reflection, it goes back. It's going back to its source. Because it's always going back to its source. And the reason it returns afterwards is because of the desire of Atzmus. So Eir's nature is to be subsumed and into its source. Like he says in Tanya, Perikutes, about Neshama and Hashem Nishmas Adam, like a flame. Its natural inclination is to go to its source. The opposite of Gashmis. But the interesting thing here, he says it because of the Ha'ara. Because it's only Ha'ara, it's only a reflection. Which I guess means to say, first I thought, Ha'ara seems to say that since it's only a reflection, meaning it has nothing of its own, all it is a reflection of its source, so it constantly wants its source. But I added one point that he didn't say beferish because it needs to be energized from its source. Okay. Va'beis, and the second reason, mitzat shahis chabros achayis im mitzias hanivra hu b'chinas ratzav v'shuv. So this was the first reason because of the energy itself. The energy itself is in a state of Ratzeh. That's its personality, its nature is. Here he's saying because the connection between life force and the object that it's giving life to, that it's sustaining, is in a form of Ratzeh and Shuv. What does this mean? It's impossible. It's not possible that the energy should settle in comfortably without some type of restlessness. In other words, it doesn't just come and settle in, everything is good, now we're here. No, it's constantly in a state of restlessness. In a form of hispashtus. There he says clearly, histalkus is a contraction and hispashtus expansion. Histalkus also means to remove and return, but that's the idea, contraction and expansion. So in other words, it's not, the second reason is not mitzad the air being a reflection needs to be connected to its source, wants to be connected to its source. Here, the opposite reason. Because it doesn't belong, it doesn't feel comfortable in this world, so to speak. It doesn't mean, and it's not obviously it doesn't have a desire. It means its personality, air, is such that it has to constantly have that restlessness. My sense of an understanding of this is because it has to always remind us that there's a life force. If our neshama feels too comfortable in the body, then it loses its power, it loses its role of reminding us there's something higher than us. So for Eir to remain Eir, cannot just suddenly Eir settles in and says, okay, now I'm settling a permanent resident in this world. It stays in a form of constant flow and restlessness. The Gam, and also the Hischatshus Achayis Ubchinas Ratzeh V'Shuv. It looks like he's adding a third thing now. And also the renewal of the energy is in a form of Ratzeh V'Shuv. In other words, what renews it is this back and forth, ebb and flow.
Pulses a lot.
Pulsating energy. Yeah, pulsating is very good also. It's like a pulse. Yeah.
Emitting pulses.
Like as it's known, the energy has to be in a form of dvekas. The energy must be connected, attached. But then now he goes and qualifies. Energy that's mamish dvekus. Ain't a begeder islapshus ben Evrayim. So the air, as we spoke, I think the parentheses that is going to that air. The air that's beyond islapshus, like maybe air makif, or air before it comes into containers, air panimi even. So then, that air is mamish dvekus mamish, is mamish attached. It won't manifest in the creation, in the creatures. I don't know if he's. I think I correct myself. First, I thought he meant he's speaking a higher level of air. He's saying something like this: Chayis has to be in a form of the Chayis has to be dvekus. But if it's going to be complete dvekus, it's going to only have Ratzeh and no Shuv. And it won't be bislapshus. So it needs to have.
But that's the definition of
it. Dvekus, I through Ratzeh and Shuv is that type of. So it keeps the balance. If it's too much, it is integrated or internalized too much, it loses its dvekus, and you must have it for life force. If electricity becomes the light bulb, we got a problem. You want it to remain a life force, but you want it to be commensurate to where it's entering. So that's the Ratzeh V'Shuv keeps that balance, the pulse keeps that balance. Like it says elsewhere. And from this pulsating energy comes the state, the dimension of time. The Haristalkus V'Ishpashtus, because Histalkus and Ishpashtus, which is leaving, or you could say contracting and expanding. Harizeh Hischalkus Ba'er. That is a Hischalkus. It's like two movements, a distinction in the air. It transmits, and then it stops transmitting. Because what's pulsating energy? Think of it like a heart beating. So it contracts, goes back. Now it expands and shoots the blood through the arteries, right? And then, like he says, so there's a nimshach v'nifsek, and then it stops. What does it do? It returns as it contracts again, and then v'chayzer v'nimshach, and then returns and transmits again. So we have here is a movement. This movement is what defines time. What we will call past, present, future is this movement. So eliminate physical past, present, future. This movement exists in Ruchnis. That's what he's saying right now. From this tenua, from this dual movement, or not dual, constant movement, a flow, a pulse, from this will be created time in our world. What I'm still concerned with, you say he does conclude with the klal and prat of Zman.
No,
so I'm not sure.
His whole Maimar Musga was to bring out the...
There's no Maimar Musga here. The Maimar Musga is done with. Eir was finished. Hold on, but let's go back for a moment. He said, after he finished the whole idea of Mokim, he started with Zman. He said, so what did he say about Zman? Everything is in time. What is the the Levad is Shenesav min hahed Levad vaya az mashleim im kenari hu mizmach lazan zehu b'chinas hazman b'chlal ma sheyesh lehem hazman. How does this connect to the Zman Prati? Is what I'm not understanding.
I thought this is the...
Because what he just said now, all this explains Zman Kloli. In general, the idea of a before and after. There's a before and after. What is it? Ruchnis is the pulse, the two stages of the pulse, not the two, the constant contraction, expansion, return, ebb and flow. What's that? Let me just say it. Zman Kloli. And I still don't know where the Levadze ends, to be honest. There's so many places you could say now. The rak after the parentheses, I think, is a key. What's the rak inyan?
What's his chapus, like the allocation of an amount of time?
Okay, let me finish the chapter. I'm not clear exactly, but the general havon I got, but and the specific. What's the rak? What's the rak?
It's the hinezo because it makes sense. The vadza is hinezo.
No, I'm talking about what is the rak after the parenthesis? Rak in is chalkos hazman. What's the rak?
Day by day.
What's the qualification?
He's saying that
because his chalkos hazman is not
mechayiv details.
It's not zmaniyim. It's not the fact that oil is manim and the loy nitzchi. Because avaloy chuy vadai mishum ze his chapus is man. What's his chapus is man? Bar v'chay shaban.
But he didn't answer the question by Shittal Fishnin.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that.
But still, how does it go? But he doesn't explain
he didn't answer the question. That's not Mechuyev Shittal Fishnin. It's only he's explaining his
because this whole explanation about it is tachlis and his pashtus is supposed to be explained.
Yeah. In other words, if it was 20,000 years, this would also fit. Because so it doesn't say why 6. No, the answer why 6 ultimately is because there's a 6 midas. Yeah. And that's where the Rotz V'Shuv happens, 6 stages. That's the real reason. Maybe that's what he's alluding to. But one second, but you're making a good point. Zman Kloli does not determine, Zman Kloli just tells us that existence is temporary. There's a beginning and an end, before and after. That we know. It just doesn't tell us what it will entail. Once it's there, what does it entail? 6,000, 5,000, 20,000, etc. Between
point A and point B, there's no definition.
Right, but we do know rak. But however, the general distinction of time, however long it will extend,
is the ebb and flow.
Is defined by the ebb and flow of Ratzi V'Shuv. That's what Pashto is what he's saying. Okay.
But it seemed to me like this whole Ratzi V'Shuv is saying how it's Lo Nitzchi. How it about Zman Klali.
Not necessarily.
What
No.
was Zman Klali about it?
Every moment.
What defines time? What makes time time?
Yeah, because you could be in Alaska.
What makes before and after?
All time. What makes it? What separates time? It's not the sun. It's the schalkos of.
Look, 'cause you need a little abstract thinking here.
Yeah.
The question is, what makes time time? What makes something past, present, future? What defines something and then a second later? So in Ruchnis, what defines it is a two states. It's a ebb and flow. That's a second. Let's say it's a second.
Oscillation.
Let's say every pulse is a second.
One Ratzu, one Shuvah.
Grandfather.
Yeah, he's not saying exactly that because it could be less than a second. But let's for argument's sake, every pulse, every full contract and contraction expansion, every pulse is a second.
Right.
Now in Gashmi Se'elam at Mokim, remember in Mokim what was Maila? What was Mokim? Maila, quality, the quality of something. You know, Makarim Mekeme, as I discussed, someone is a bigger Talmid Chacham, a greater scholar. So his quality is his space. In Gashmi, it also takes on physical space, but you could envision just spiritual space, the quality of something. Like you said about the Malachim. What's the difference between one Malach and the next? The quality of their understanding. Fine, 1 second. In time now, he says, Kamei Kain and Zman. Zman is not quality. Zman is a shift. Is a shift from one thing to the next. What creates the shift? So in Gashmi it's 1 second leads to the next second. Past, present, future. In Ruchni it's an ebb and flow of energy, basically.
Nifsa Kam Shechasei.
So Rosh Hashanah could be happening in the same second in our physical time, just like two Malachim could exist in the same physical space. Remember we spoke about two things can be in the same space, physical space? So Rosh Hashanah could be happening the same split second. But it's two tenuas. It's a movement. Time is movement. Space is not movement. Space is quality. That's the key. Time is movement. Space is quality. That's in the pure form of it. That's what you would define.
Nifsa Kam Shechasei v'choyzer v'nimshach.
Right. That's the pulse.
Continue.
Let's put it this way: if you didn't have Ratzin and Shuv,
If it would only be a straight flow, then there would be no time. You wouldn't be able to measure it.
right? There'd be no time. You'd only have space. You'd have things that are in space, but they're like suspended. There's no before and after. There's no flow. There's no movement. Time is movement, basically. That's what time is. We actually call it that. The clock, they say, is movement. It's
The
movement.
grandfather clocks go like this, so that each one of that is like.
And every clock turns. It's movement.
Space can exist without time.
Not conceptually. I'm just giving a scenario. Yeah, space without time would be they create Chachma and Bina, but there's no movement. They're like frozen.
Mokim is quality, it's unfortunate.
Kedima Nicha. Remember, for Chachma to reach the Bina, you need time. Space is not enough. You need a movement. Or else there's two entities. If God put 10 spheres without time, you'd have 10 qualitative energies without relationship with each other. But the relationship means movement.
Relationship is also space.
No.
They have a relationship.
Yeah, because
No,
here and this one is here.
They have a relationship.
Yeah, but-
Before they have Zaman.
No, but there's no connection between them. There's no movement. What?
There's a relationship between
Scholars,
before Zaman, of course there is.
That's because there's man. That's why there is that. How does Chachma flow into Bina if there's no Ratzin and Shuv? It's two separate. Why would Chachma go to Bina? Like he says here, every air is going to go back to its source. It's not going to go down. It's not going to go to the next level. Why would a greater teacher go to a smaller student? Only because there's a Ratzin and Shuv going on.
But that's
Going back to the sources.
Hey, I'm just giving you a scenario. It doesn't work for you. Fine.
Zaman, by saying that, I mean, please. Get a statement.
Okay, let's finish the chapter. Let's see here. Look,
By the way,
abstract stuff you got.
I'm reading a little bit in the Kitzer. It's definitely the Schalkus and it's two.
That's the Levazes.
Definitely.
Okay, so we'll see. Listen, I have to come to a conclusion. Let's read it because we have to see where he's going with all this. Then we can go back, and we've done this before. We managed. Not concerned. Let's put it this way: this is going to add, but right now we're just trying to get our heads wrapped around this. This is very.
Around.
Yeah. You could absolutely say what I'm saying. Space is quality, time is relationships and movement. 100%. Based on what he's saying here. It's very clear that.
What about the whole thing of Kedima B'Yichud, like cause and effect?
He doesn't say that here, but Kedima Yichud is Ratziv V'Shuv. That's what it really means. He doesn't use those words right now, but in other places he does.
Other places he mentioned that.
Yeah.
Is that
And if you all behave well, I'll show you something from the Rebbe on this. A nice order the Rebbe wrote right after that, a few weeks after the heart attack, on this topic,
On Iron Base?
on this chapter.
Oh, the heart pumping.
No, not that. No, heart pumping. Time, about time and space. Yeah. But only if you're well behaved. Talk about you, doctor. Okay. Mezehu shenisav in azman be'elam. Okay, now he concludes. V'ze'in elam v'shana de'elam. I'm sorry, elam shana nefesh. This is elam v'shana de'elam, meaning. Oh, someone else. This is zeh elam v'shana. This is elam v'shana. Elam is space. Shana is time. Remember, elam shana nefesh. This is a very fundamental chapter about time and space. You can always refer to it. You should always remember Kuf Sameches. If you ever think you got to figure it out, always go back here. It'll humble you. The Elam ubchinis etzma mitziyah shala Elam is v'nevrayim. Elam meaning space. That's the etzma mitziyah. Elam is the world. So now you see what the world means. It doesn't mean world like a planet. It means the core existence of the worlds and the creations. It means all the levels, the dimensions and the creations. V'shana ubchinis zman shalahem. And Shana refers to the time, their time. What is that? The movement, the ebb and flow, the pulse of the energy that and life force that manifests inside of them.
So the Elam is the makeup of the actual.
I think the Rak is different. No, the Rak is not about Ischalkus. You know what the Rak is? After comparing time, after space, he said the Kamaykein in Hazman. But Zman is the Ikar Ischalkus is the Eir V'Achayis. In Mokim he didn't say that. That's I think the Rak. The Rak is going back to talking about first space, then time. So in time it's more Chayis. That's what it sounds like from here. That existence is the existence. And the Chayis, time in other words, is far more connected to the energy within existence than space. Space is also the energy. It's the energy that defines Chokhmah, the quality of Chokhmah, Bina, but not. It more sounds like this. That in other words, it looks like from here that Mokim is more Keli and Zman is more Eir, a little. No, even though it doesn't say that, and it would be a little strange even to say that, frankly. But it looks like Zman. I think now that Rebbe Zahara makes a lot more sense because Zman definitely, when Zman and Mokim, the question is what comes first. And the answer is Zman comes before Mokim.
You said it the other day.
Yeah. So in a second, okay. Let's finish here. The Ikri Nazman hu b'biyah. And now he's going back, just like he said about Mokim. What we say, where does Mokim really begin from Malchus that creates biyah? Since the Ikri, the primary thing of time is in biyah. V'chein b'bchinas ha-Malchus. And also in the state of Malchus. Melech Molech Yimlech. So we say Malchus, we speak past, present, future. Melech, Molech Yimlech. He was a Melech, he was a king, he is a king, and he will be a king.
Yeah, only
Melech Molech
Malchus and all would be included.
Yeah, but this is Pashas Malchus, like he said before. Malchus of Atzilus creates Biyah.
Yeah.
That's where the beginning of time.
It's not all general.
No, the other ones for sure. The other ones are in Biyah. The other ones are part of
I
Biyah.
understand.
And now Medrash Rabbe, he says, we learn from which pasuk it learn. We learn from Beira Ilmas v'Yechrivam. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, we learn there's a Seder Zmanim Kedim L'chein, that there's an order of time Kedim to before time. So just like we spoke before about Mokim, remember 3 levels we said, there's physical, mamash, there's how it's in Biyah, there's how it's in Atzilus, same thing in time. Time begins as we know it, in other words, the beginnings of past, present, future, begins in Malchus and then Biyah. Seder Zmanim, that's Zman of Atzilus. V'hu'in hagdima v'ichur. There we go. The Gedima V'Ichur Shebes Sfiris. This is the hierarchy, or Gedima V'Ichur, the
Cause and effect.
Gedima V'Ichur is not really cause and effect. Gedima V'Ichur means the precedence, the precedent, the precedent, the precedence, and the former and Gedima V'Ichur, the before and after. The order is ultimately the hierarchy. The order of the 10 spheres. The B'tchila Netzala B'chinas HaKesed. The first there was an emanation of Kesed. We learned this before. That's the Ratz V'Shuv. And then the transmission was ceased, and then emanated the spirit of Chochmah. If you remember, he said that Kesed had to stop in order to allow Chochmah to emerge. Why did he say that? That was a very important. Right. Kavamida. Yeah, the Kavamida. Not yeah. Right. At potove. Right. Okay. That means the yes sheidav adrag about silas asfiris. So we see from this, there's an order, a hierarchy, and an order in the emanation of the spheres. Like it says elsewhere, this is the level of Zman. But as they said here, Seder Zmanim. And in general, this hierarchy is also the Ratz V'Shuv, the ebb and flow, and the energy. Like it says in Sefer Yitzira, that he spoke to them in a form of Ratz and Shuv. So we see that the Ratz V'Shuv, that's exactly, the Kesed flows, and then it returns to allow Chochmah to emerge. Then it flows further and returns. So the Ratz V'Shuv is connecting to Gedima V'Ichur. He's connecting it to the hierarchy. Shemizehu Inyan Hazman. From this we have time. So we know from this that all the worlds are in a state of time
We also said that
and space. You could say, then there's in some places in Masamach Vov, maybe here or later he'll speak about, he goes that the root of Ratz V'Shuv is Moti V'lei Moti, which means, the word Moti means coming or going.
Coming and going.
Moti V'lei Moti means you don't know whether you're coming or going. That's the bottom line. But Moti in Hebrew, it's Aramaic for like stretching out, I think. Huh?
Expansion and return.
Yeah, but this explains it's not. Ratz V'Shuv is an actual expansion and contraction. Moti V'lei Moti are really two tenuous. They're two like the will to be and the will not to be. So it's more like he wants, he doesn't want. Reitze V'Eina Reitze type of thing. What's the translation of Moti actually in Aramaic? Actually, it means to stretch.
It didn't give him his.
Didn't extend. Extend. It's extend and not extend. Yeah. But it's a far more subtle form than Ratz V'Shuv.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do the kitzur. Summary. What?
There's
no Ratz V'Shuv. And Atzmas is nothing.
The sugi of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai as opposed to other Tanoim. He talks about the Mati Ramati.
Atzmus, we can't speak any type of movement. So you're talking about an air. The question is about the level of air.
Within Atzmus.
Ratz V'Shuv is usually not Silas, and Mati V'lei Mati is in the air before the Tzimtzum. That's usually how it's explained.
Yeah. Okay.
But not Atzmus. Remember, Atzmus is off limits.
Okay. All right. Atzmus.
Or else you get a battle crack on that.
No, Atzmus is so beyond that. Even that won't happen. Even Panei Lo Yiro, you don't see an Atzmus. That's already a level that you cannot see. Let's see if this Kitzur clarifies anything. Now, this interface of Ak in the creation, remember in creation, because it's a klal. We're talking about Chetzeni Yisak now, not Pnimi Yisak. As it has a commonality, has a relationship with existence. Oh boy, now he doesn't even say Zman till later. The beginning of the chapter was a Zman. Okay, everything that was created is in a state of space.
Beginning the whole thing was talking about.
Varuchni, read the beginning of the chapter, you'll see what I'm talking about. Varuchni eina b'chinas mokim. Spirituality is not in a form of space. That's like several faculties that all exist in one place in the brain that he brought from Likutei Torah. The primary idea of space is the quality of the thing, the value. Sheyesh le'tfisa batref, that it has value, has a significance. Ubegashmi hu teir hadavar. And in physical reality, space, when you say something, is a description of the object. Geder hademim, geder hatzemeach, the category of mineral, category of vegetation.
Is that like a scientific statement?
No, not necessarily.
Does Torah itself give definition of different life levels?
What?
Does Torah give different levels of life? Doming to Me'achain, does it classify?
It's 4 categories of creation creatures.
You have the animal kingdom in
Yeah, the
animal kingdom.
So what's your question? That's a empirical reality. That's empirical reality.
It's an adjective. It's a describing.
I think
It doesn't matter. Just an example.
right, but I think that what we're talking about is the
No, it's not.
biological or
It's not Darwin. No.
kind of defines each type
Each
of
class. No.
Okay.
It's classes and categories, is what he's saying now.
But also there's a dogma.
Biological.
This is the quality of.
And in spiritual creatures, is their value in their quality of their comprehension and their service. Like you said about the malachim.
That's their mokim.
Nevertheless, malachim, you find something in between. That you still see the malach is connected to some type of physical measurement. Batzilus urak b'mayla. Batzilus is only the quality. Malachim is like an in-between thing. Well, kamoy kein hein bizman, and the same thing is in time. Same thing, they are in time, meaning creation. Here we go. Besides the fact that he said that meaning that existence was preceded by non-existence, and they were innovated. They're a new entity, which means that they are not permanent.
Because there was a header.
That's the parenthesis. And energy is like nitzchi. Okay, that's good. That's so far so good.
Yeah.
The air is like nitzchi because it's kiyum nitzchi, even though Kod Mehed and all the things he qualified.
So besides
that, yeah, it's clear that the distinction of time is chalkus. Of time comes from the ebb and flow and the energy. Pnei shu'ara, that was the first reason. Because it's a reflection, so it goes back to its source.
the connection.
And the way the creature, the object, and its life force connect is in a form of this type of ebb and flow, like a pulse. And also its attachment and its renewal from its source.
Of the air.
His chadshuse, in other words, also the first inyan is man.
The first thing.
That it's chiddush, that it's new, is also in the form of ratzav v'shuv. U'batzilus ub'chinas seides man b'kedima v'ichur. And Atzilus is higher than like with Mokim before. Is an order of time in kedima v'ichur and hierarchy. V'dabra b'hem b'ratzav v'shuv, like he said in Sefer Yetzirah. He spoke to them with ratzav v'shuv. Ebb and flow. Okay, I got more to say on this topic. Plenty more to say. One second, is the next chapter going to continue about this topic?
I think so. Just start out that
way. Is next chapter. Oh, great. Okay. The actions are still not over with the action. Let me just say the following. I guys got to get this off my chest here. I wish that Rebbe Rashab just elaborated a little more, made it a little easier for us. A little easier. There's so much said here. I'm thinking out loud, just for the record, that the Ratzav V'Shuv, and I'm not sure where he's going to go. I don't want to jump the gun without learning the next chapter. But the Ratzav V'Shuv has an additional element that, in a way, If you didn't have Ratzav Yeshuv, the interface couldn't work properly between physical time and spiritual time. If you know what I'm saying. Because if existence just, let's say God invested a piece of energy into this world, and that's it. No ebb and flow. Electricity is running the show, but the electricity doesn't have that constant... Right, there wouldn't be a Machaz B'Tuvei. It wouldn't be this constant flow of new energy back and forth. So then, we would be bound to physical parameters forever. The Ratzav Yeshuv, besides creating time, also creates a connection between higher and lower levels. That's really what he's... just thinking out loud, an additional point here.
That's creating a connection between us and God, because if not, we would...
That's what you're saying, that man is a connector, as opposed to Malkum.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to show you was this. You want to give me a quick Sichos Chelik Chov?
Yeah.
So Chelik Chov, the Rebbe says, I think it's a chapter. I'm almost sure this chapter is Seichen. Because Ayin Beis came out a year before the Rebbe had the heart attack. And then the Rebbe...
Physics of today, when you get to a point where there's no time, there's no space. So it's basically proves the same... as you get closer to the speed of light, which is, no time actually.
Yeah.
As a makom gam nifsak,
if you go faster than the speed of light, then you go backwards in time. Go back in time.
So the Rebbe wrote a footnote then, that we were struggling to understand it.
So backwards or forward?
No, if you go backwards. Because there's no time, so then the Chayra, that's what the theory.
Yeah, it is a
But
theory.
today, they had this thing with this
Back to the future.
accelerator in Europe, and they have this, they supposedly...
Here, the Rebbe wrote this harder. Let me tell you what he wrote in harder. He's speaking here like this.
Where is it? What parsha?
Chaysar Lamed Ches.
Chelik Chaf and Nukut Six.
Der Tam von dem, was man verbindet, Minion von Sichossen, was tut auf die Parsche, die Sicher, Shalomar, Asara Mamar, mit Zman Davke, Shnei Chaysar. After Pias, the Gedder von Elm is nicht nur Zman Areich Mokim. So he goes like this. Yede Hisavus, Keil Lech Hisavus from Mokim, is a Shinui Legabi Kedem Hisavus. Every creation, even the creation of space, is a shinui, is a change from the way it was before it was created. That's what it means. Like I said here, it didn't, and now it is. Before any existence, also the existence of space, there was already something that was then afterwards changed. That is the content of what Zman is, time.
But there was already something.
There was something that has to be changed.
So the Rebbe wrote a footnote when he said that there has to be a shinu legabe kedem esavus. The Rebbe writes in a footnote like this: and this you can say, this shinu even by the first second of time. Even though you can't call it actual past.
You say Hoivid, then must be an over, right?
Because that's from the category. Right?
It's not clear. So basically, you're saying even Kaviochol in Atzmus, there had to be an over in order to be a Hoive.
No, he's not saying Kadnasus. He's saying even the first second of creation, you could say there is nothing before. So even though he says there's no actual past,
because there's no time,
right? Because there's no time, but you could say that there's an element of before and after hierarchy, like al derech. The Rebbe emphasizes al derech, like siba mesuva b'seichel, like a cause and effect. What I said before about like with Ur or something, or he doesn't want. I don't want to play it to Ur.
My siba and suba.
What?
My siba and suba.
I gave you something better.
Siba Subav is like conceptual time. That's what it means.
It's yours.
to waste.
Yeah, that's right. It's not pointing out the footnotes, page 333. You can look it up and study it. I remember when the Rebbe wrote it, man. It was not easy to understand. And he's saying the next footnote, he's saying this page in Ayin Beis. Shin Lamed Tes.
There's more to than what you read.
No, that's it. That's what I read, but you can read it yourself to that. Okay, so we'll stop here. We finished chapter 168. We did pages 339 and 340.